Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Eternal Spring. I'm Paul Thurrott, and I'm here as always with my wife, Stephanie. Hello.
Hello. Hello, everyone.
So, kind of a big day this week. As we mentioned in our last video, we were applying for temporary residency, and we went through that process just a few days ago. So, we'd like to talk about that today and then maybe a little bit about the next steps. How did it go?
I think it went pretty well.
Yeah.
I think, to start at the beginning, we had to um, book an appointment online. When we first went to book it online, all the slots were taken up, but then we emailed the consulate in Philadelphia, which is the closest consulate to where we live. They sent us a link, and at that point, we could book appointments for probably 3 or 4 weeks out from the time. That was probably mid-December, and we had the appointments this past Thursday.
Right.
So in the course of that, when they reply and they confirm your appointment, they ask for you to confirm your appointment 7 days before and to send PDFs of your financial documentation that proves that you are eligible for temporary residency.
Yeah, I just step back for 1 second. I know we talked about this last time, but those requirements vary by consulate. In Philadelphia, it was you can do it one of two ways: income or savings. Right? Income was $2,550 per month per person after taxes. You had to show 6 months of W-2s or 1099s or whatever, or pay stubs. Or savings, right? And then savings could be not just savings accounts, but SEPs, IRAs, 401ks, et cetera. So that was a balance of at least $42,100 for at least 12 months. And so Stephanie went through our financial documents, and how many would you say? How many
documents?
Yeah, attachments or whatever.
God. 12 for each of us for just Fidelity, 4 more for quarterly for one account, another dozen.
Yeah, lots.
So another dozen for your pay stubs. Yeah, more than that. We wanted to make sure we sent everything
right
by PDF so we would understand exactly what we needed, because we really didn't want to have to do 2 trips out to Philadelphia to.
Yeah, you don't want to do this again.
Yeah,
I want to get this done the first time.
We really wanted to get it right the first time.
Yeah. And this was individualized. We didn't. None of what we did was anything joint. It was your pay stubs, your your pay stubs, whatever it was, your Fidelity, your retirement. It was all. There was nothing joint. So we both had our own things. They got back to me pretty quickly. They got back to you pretty slowly, but they did get back to you.
Yeah.
And they basically said, I think in both cases, just bring the Fidelity. In my case, I have a couple of different Fidelity accounts, but they said just bring the one. And I don't know, the way I am, I sort of said, you know what, we're going to bring some extra stuff just in case. I don't want anything to go wrong here. But we made our little packages, printouts, because you have to give them the stuff. We had to bring other things, passports, et cetera. And passport photo processing fee, and then we waited. And then the day came, and our appointment was actually we had separate appointments, right? 2:30 and 3 at the consulate in Philadelphia. We drove down there in the pouring rain. It was a terrible day. I would say on a good day of driving, get to Philly in about an hour and 15 minutes is usually what we would say.
Yeah.
We seem to make it there in a little bit under that somehow. The trip down was pretty quick.
Yeah,
for what it is. We had to find parking and whatever. We ended up getting there early, which was also by design, right? I'd rather be to something like important like this early, have time to figure out what the situation is. And our first appointment, your appointment was at 2:30. We arrived there, I want to say at around 1:30. And so we figured, well, we'll look around and figure it out, and maybe they could take us early. You never know.
Yep.
And it was in a place in Philadelphia called the Bourse Building, I think is the name of it. It's historic in some way. It's a beautiful building. It's a food hall now, a lot of it, the downstairs part. It's beautiful. And then we had asked where this thing was, and they said, oh, it's up the stairs from the food hall, which is now, it's like the upstairs of a food court in a mall or something. And I don't know how else to say this other than to say that this was not what I expected.
No, it was not what I expected either.
What did you
Um,
think you were going to be
I
walking
just
into?
expected, because I kind of think of a consulate as a small version of an embassy. And when you're in a
Yeah,
big city and you see the embassies, they just look like really impressive, elegant locations.
yeah,
So I guess I expected it to be a lot more formal and also kind of more private. I imagined that we would
yep.
go back into an office with somebody and
Hmm.
sit down at a desk or table and go through all that paperwork. And in fact, the experience is very similar to anything you've ever done at the DMV.
The
It's,
DMV, yeah,
yeah, for sure.
like a really bad DMV,
You
you know,
know?
like a low rent kind of utilitarian DMV
Mhm.
where it's a bunch of people sitting around, some windows or well, yeah, windows, I guess, glass, plastic
Yes.
glass, whatever, with holes so you could talk to the person on the other side. Um,
Very busy too. I
very
kind of
busy.
imagine just how much stuff could a consulate have to do. And this
Hmm.
is based on nothing. This is just what I imagined, but really
Yep.
busy.
We were the
People,
only non-Mexicans there when we
yeah.
walked in.
I
I'm
mean, there
curious,
was 100, right? Would you say
easily
100
100.
people?
Yeah.
More than
I don't
100.
know what services this place provides to Mexican citizens, but all of them had paperwork and official looking documents, and they would be called up and they would do their thing and they would leave. And honestly, it wasn't chaotic. It
Mm-mm,
moved
no.
pretty quick, but we put our name in and we kind of hoped that we would be taken early, and we
Yeah.
weren't. Right. So
No.
right around 2 o'clock, another couple with a child came in, who were American. And we thought, okay, well, these people are going to be in front of us, obviously. They're a little bit younger than us. Their kid was probably a teenager, young teenager. And they got called up to a window at about 2:10. So I figured they were the 2 o'clock appointment. And I'm not a natural eavesdropper, but I have to say, in this case, I was very interested to hear what was happening, right? Because they were clearly doing something like us. And it became clear over time there was a problem. They sat down. He had said something in the beginning to the person behind the glass, if this doesn't work, I can do this other thing or something like that. And 2:10 turned into 2:30, turned into 2:40. And the woman finally came back out, and they I heard that they were trying to get permanent residency and were denied. And there didn't seem to be any big concern on anyone's
Mm-mm.
part. They just left,
Yeah.
you know. And so we were finally helped around 3 o'clock,
3:10, 3, a little after 3.
a little after
Yeah.
3.
Yeah.
So a half an hour after our initial
Hmm.
appointment. But they did let us go together.
Hmm.
And maybe you could describe, I mean, what was that experience like?
Yeah. So she called me up. And I think one thing that's important to know is pretty much everything can happen in our case, at least,
Mm-hmm.
everything, you could do everything in English. The woman that helped us spoke
Yeah.
perfect English. When we checked in, they
Mm-hmm.
understood English and they told us what to do. When they are calling names and windows as you're waiting
Mm-hmm.
for the Mexicans, that's all in Spanish. So I kind of thought they would call our name in Spanish and then it would switch over to English. But in fact, even
Yeah.
though they had been calling people for an hour in Spanish, when they called us, they just had, Stephanie window 5 in
Did
English.
they actually
So
say 5? Not okay.
yeah.
Oh,
She was
okay.
all in
Because I was
English.
going to say, yeah, they were saying that, obviously they're calling people whatever their names are, and they're saying the name of the number of the window in Spanish, right? Most people could probably count up to 20, so
Yeah.
that wasn't particularly difficult. But I was thinking, they're saying these names really quickly, and I'm thinking we're never going to hear our name, maybe.
Mhm.
But she said
Yes.
very clearly,
Yeah.
Stephanie.
Hmm.
So there
Yep.
we go.
So I went up and I asked if Paul could come up with me, and she said yes, we could do it together. So we
Right.
brought up, we each had our own separate stack of papers.
Mm-hmm.
The email was very clear, and it's important to just read the email that they send when you get your appointment confirmed, and it's
Yep.
your passport, a copy of your passport, a passport photo,
Mm-hmm.
um, and then your financial documents, which are, as we outlined before. She was very thorough. She took both stacks.
Yeah.
It's 2 pages from every statement for the past 12 months in the case of
Right, the
proving your
retirement
financial
fund. Yeah.
soundness by savings or investments. And she, she paged through every page from, it was January to December 2022 for both of us. And she did look at every single piece
Yeah.
of paper. So
I don't
be
know.
careful not to miss a month. Be careful
Yeah.
that you
It
don't
was a
have a
young
month
woman.
that drops
It was
below.
not okay, but it was not a process. It was not a computerized, now we're going to look you up on the system kind of a thing. It was literally just a young woman looking at paper,
Yes. Yeah.
which I thought was kind of interesting.
Mhm.
This was not the
She,
mahogany office I imagined in my brain,
no, it's sliding
just
it
standing
under
there in the DMV.
plexiglass.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then she asked if we had sent those files via PDF, and we said yes. We had actually, she was the person we had
Right.
communicated with via email. And then she says, okay, have a seat. And she takes all your papers and passports and whatnot back in, maybe 15, 20 minutes?
Yeah, maybe as many as 30. There was a moment there where I thought it was going to happen real quick. Like she seemed to be coming back with everything, and then she disappeared and was talking to a guy, and they did their thing. But the important thing here, like you said, you know, pay attention to what they ask for. You're going to give them everything, and they're going to keep all of it except for your passport, right? They need your original passport, right? They're holding on to everything that you bring. I offered extra stuff. I had brought my W-2s from last year. We had copies of our deed for the apartment, which I knew wouldn't matter, but I like to throw these things in, like, hey, we actually bought a place and we're serious about this. She did ask us a couple of questions about what we liked about Mexico, why we wanted to go there, how long did we think we would be staying there in a given year or whatever. And she seemed, she has to ask these questions, right? The correct answer to none of those questions is because it's so cheap to live there. That's not really the rationale for us per se anyway. I mean, it's certainly one of a number of things. We've done that kind of pro and con of Mexico thing already, but the people and the history and the sites, it's just the incredible scope of the nation. It's just, it's a beautiful place, but I think a lot of people are doing this specifically for financial reasons. And that's not necessarily the greatest way to go about things, let alone the greatest way to present it. I would say at the consulate, I wouldn't recommend that.
Yep.
But she seemed genuinely interested in our answers and in what we were doing, and shared with us that she had lived near us somewhere in Mexico City.
Yep.
So yes, so like you said, 30 minutes or 20 to 30 minutes.
Yeah, we waited a little bit, and then so she came back after that, and in that she came back and while you went over and paid, it's what, $40, $50.
It was 48. I want to say 40, something like that per person. That guy too, by the way, just random aside, super friendly, very interested in where we were going. And then same thing. He used to live in Mexico City as well. He lived out by the airport. We chatted about that in English. And shocker, people from Mexico are super friendly. But they seem genuinely interested, which I thought was really kind of neat. It's a busy office. There's stuff going on here.
Yep.
But anyhow, so
super
I paid
nice,
the bill.
super interested. So then she came back. She called us up. She had both of our passports opened to the page where she had stuck in the first step of the visa process.
Yeah.
It's kind of
to be clear,
because
people are like, oh my God, you put a photo of this on, this is not our visa, right? Well, okay. I'm sorry. I should say technically, yes, this is a visa. It's a one-use visa. This is not our temporary residency card. This is not the official thing that we're going to use going forward. We use this one time. And this is the trick. There is a very specific set of things you have to go through in this process, and you have to do them correctly, which is why we've hired someone to help us on this for the second part, which we'll talk about in a second. So we talked about all the stuff we had to do what we just did. And then that woman that we were dealing with at the consulate was explaining the next steps as well, which is something we're kind of well versed in, right? Because we've been kind of steeped in this for a while now. But
it was good that she explained it.
Well, yes,
because it's really important to do it properly. Because if you don't do it properly, you start again from back to go to consulate.
So, okay. So she was probably confused that we weren't taking notes because there were very specific steps. We were just kind of happily nodding our heads, but we know this stuff, right? In other words, the next time we go to Mexico, which we're going to try to book soon, I think we have, is it 6 months that we have to do this?
6 months.
So we have a 6-month window where we have to go to Mexico. That trip, we can only stay there for 30 days. We can't stay for 180 days. We can't stay for whatever else. We have to tell the person in customs that we are here for this purpose and show them the temporary sticker, and make sure that we are not entered as tourists, but rather as people are here to complete their application for temporary residency. This is the important step. If somehow we screwed that up, right, we would have to leave Mexico and come back. We don't have to start the whole application process, right? But we would have to leave. Now, if you're driving into Mexico, that's not a huge deal. When you're flying into Mexico, that's a little bit of a problem. And so you could, I think, walk past that person, but if you didn't leave the area, could come back, talk to a manager and say, excuse me, this isn't right. And you want to make sure that this is correct before you leave, not just the airport, but the customs area of the airport. Like this is what you were referring to. You don't want to get through there as tourists, right?
Right.
And then we have 30 days where we have to complete this process at an immigration office, in our case, Mexico City. And then we get a card, which is their version of a green card, I think is the way she described it to us.
Yes, that's what she described it.
Yeah. I assume it is is that technically a visa or just an identification
like
card? I don't know what to call it.
Temporary resident card.
Temporary residency identification card. Yeah. That second process, because it's going to take place in Mexico, that second step, that second part takes place in Mexico, will be conducted in Spanish. Right. So that's going to be a little trickier. But again, and there's a big process you go through just to get a place in line, because you can't make an appointment. You just have to show up. So part of the thing we're doing where we're hiring somebody is somebody might actually stay in a line overnight, so that when we show up in the morning, we can just walk in.
Yep.
Which is incredible.
Right.
When you think about it. So we'll get to that next time. So I guess, so we have this thing now. We're good for our next trip. We're going to complete this process the next time we go to Mexico again. Fingers crossed, hopefully we'll do everything right. And then we left the consulate and grabbed a snack and a drink, and then drove home in the pouring rain and dark. It was 90 minutes because of course it was, because you can't live Philadelphia.
Well, and by then it was rush hour to go home.
Yeah. But you know what? It was okay because we had accomplished this thing, and we were looking forward to this. Like I don't know if I would call the waiting that we did in the consulate a preview of future bureaucracy to come. I don't think that's fair. Honestly, I feel like we know there's a lot of bureaucracy in Mexico, but I feel like it went pretty quick.
Yeah.
They did help those guys a few minutes late, and then those guys took a lot of extra time, but they were doing something that was never going to work, apparently. So that was the issue there. But, whatever. I mean, I think we were helped at the time of what would have been our second appointment, and we were probably done
in less than an hour.
Certainly in less than an hour, 45 minutes, maybe somewhere in there.
Yeah.
It's not bad.
It was pretty clear at this consulate that there was the one woman whose job it was to help people in our position, or those other people, like Americans who are trying to do some type of residency or something with Mexico. And then most of the everybody else was helping the Mexicans with whatever forms they were picking up and that kind of thing. So, there was a one woman, and the appointments were half an hour apart, and she took those people a little bit late, but then their appointment went quite long. And then from her point of view, by the time we left, she was caught back up.
She might have been done. I don't think there were any, for all of the scheduling and, if everything's full. I mean, I think there were 3 appointments that afternoon anyway. I'm sure there were others during the day, but it was a busy place.
So I would say my advice to anybody who wants to do this is, as long as you think you can get to Mexico in the 6 months after you do it, just get the process started, because it might take a while to get an appointment. All the consulates are different. And it might, it might not be convenient for you when you find an appointment that's available. Maybe it doesn't work for your work schedule or whatever. So get started, at least get the appointment booked. You can always cancel the appointment if something comes up, but I mean, get it on your calendar, start to get the documents that you need together. Make sure, make sure your passport's up to date, make sure you get your passport photo, and then
Sure.
take it from there, because you really do have the 6 months after that.
I think I would have, if we were closer to Philly, I would have gone in and just seen where this place was and kind of checked it out. That would have changed my expectations quite a bit. Not being able to do that was part of the reason I wanted to go in so early and to say, look, we need time, because first, we don't know how we're going to be able to park. We got to figure that out as well. But, I think understanding what you're going to do really helps set the stage for when you actually do it. That would have been good experience. But now that I've seen it, it's not what we expected for sure, but it was particularly complicated.
Not that complicated, and the people were all really nice and really interested in what we were doing. So yeah, it was a good experience. It went well.
Yeah. So given the time period, we haven't even booked our next trip. So it's likely we'll have a few other videos somewhere in the middle that are about other topics. But obviously, as we go through this process, we'll create more videos describing how that goes. I mean, we were talking on the way in, and I said, what happens if this doesn't work? And then, Stephanie said, well, then we make a video about that. What are you going to do? I mean, it is what it is, but
right.
It seemed like it went pretty well. So, it did go really well.
Yep, it did for sure.
Yeah. All right. So I think that handles that.
Yes.
We will be back as soon as possible with another video. Thank you for watching, and we will catch you next time.
Thanks. Bye.